All right, well, let's cross to Tehran. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman there, Esmaeil Baghaei, is speaking.
Ensure the U.S. president honor his commitments. No, there is no assurance that the U.S. president will honor his commitments. The only assurance is our military capabilities. Why you are not responding to the U.S. media reports? I believe we have more important works to do than responding to the U.S. president's posts or the other malicious media campaigns, including caricatures posted on the social platforms. We have works that are more important than responding to these trivial issues. We are working in order to arrive at the best solutions to maintain and safeguard the interest of our countries. At the same time, we are not responding to each and every comment. We are a cultured, educated, and developed people. At the same time, we respond to the enemy's aggression accordingly, as was the habit in the past. A question from Al Alam TV. Is ending all hostility actions on all fronts, namely Lebanon, were part of the agreement? The answer is yes. Washington has recently announced that the negotiations have seen some progress. However, as it was in the past, every time Washington announces there has been some progress, we have come to see them initiating their hostility acts and aggression against our country. Americans' demeanors on the ground are totally conflicting with their statements, official statements. Is there a tangible progress on the ground? The recent transformations are the outcome of weeks of discussions, negotiations, as well as the mediation efforts being exerted by Pakistan together with some other players. In addition to that, most of the topics laid on the negotiating table have been agreed upon. That's true. However, signing the final agreement cannot be confirmed. This is not a claim that can be made by any party. And as you just rightly stated a while ago, that in the past we have seen many conflicting statements and demeanors from the United States. It has been their habit to change their demeanors in the last minute. There is always conflicting statements in addition to acts on the ground conflicting to their official statements. We have proven our capability on the battlefields and at the strategic levels with absolute firm vision. We will continue to hold on to our capabilities and maintain our national interests. I would like to hear your comments that the U.S. president has recently announced also a statement. The U.S. president is pressuring the Gulf countries in order to reach an agreement with Iran and also force them into signing the Abrahamic Accord. With respect to the first part of your question, the reality on the ground could be totally different. The head of the Zionist entity would or wouldn't run the presidential race in the United States. However, the true nature between the Zionist entity and the U.S. administration is quite obvious. And the true root of all evils in the region is Israel. The United States is not concerned with the stability or security or even the development of the regional countries. Their main interest and concern is to maintain the interest of the Zionist entity. The statements made are misleading to the public opinion and to divert attention from the main issue. However, as I said, the Zionist entity is the root of all insecurity and instability within the region. And when it comes to normalization, you cannot grant legitimacy to a non-legitimate entity. And any country or entity maintaining certain legitimate relations or normalization with the Zionist entity is baseless, especially that this entity has perpetrated genocide and violation of international law. The United States is doing their best to grant legitimacy to a non-legitimate, unlawful entity. They will continue to exercise pressure simply to divert attention from the crimes and violations committed by the Zionist entity within the region, with the total support of the United States. I would like to ask about if there is any initial agreement on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and if so, will the U.S. forces continue to have some presence or exercise some force or control over the waterway? The Iranian army and the Iranian people have proven their capabilities. We have no issue or concern, and we're not even worried about this particular issue. Our people have proven their steadfastness to the whole world, and with respect to the Strait of Hormuz, there is not a particular detail on the manner of management of the waterway. It is all up to the countries overlooking the Strait of Hormuz. We have constant communication with these countries, and we have a strategy on how to provide security and stability on and within this waterway, and to maintain all the relevant stakeholders' interests with respect to the Strait of Hormuz. The European Parliament, together with some European countries, have taken some measures, including sanctions against Iran, in an attempt to force Iran into reopening the Strait of Hormuz. How do you see this, and do they have any bearing on your bilateral relations? Any hostile act against our country will be met with a response. These are all unlawful measures, and any unlawful measure taken against any country, we wouldn't expect such country to remain silent. Iran will not. The European Union long time ago has adopted a very clear position with respect to the global developments, namely those unfolding in the region. The European Union has adopted certain policies as well as their measures are not disregarded. They should abide by the norms, practices, and regulations of the UN Charter, international law, and other relevant regulations. Abiding by these rules will eliminate any possibility for hostilities. Before the aggression against Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was wide open. Today, it is closed not because of Iran, but because of this aggression initiated by the Zionist entity and the United States. Are you in favor of the official visit to be paid by the Emir of Qatar to Tehran? The head of the National Security Council of Qatar has paid an official visit as part of the ongoing efforts aiming at pushing forward the mediation effort together with the Pakistani mediator. And as I stated earlier, the official mediator between Iran and the United States is Pakistan. However, other countries are playing some positive roles in an attempt to provide assistance to the ongoing negotiations and help reach solutions, diplomatic solutions, to the political issues in question. With respect to negotiations, some media outlets reported that Pakistan is likely to issue a statement without being endorsed by either party. Do you think that this move is likely to take place? With respect to the formalities part of the negotiations, we should focus on the course of negotiations and the document to be signed. And there is a plan we are following. If it is necessary, official visits will be paid timely. As we speak, there is no plan to head for an official visit to Pakistan or the other way around. As you stated and as reported by the media, it seems that there is some sort of agreement between the United States and Iran on an array of issues. We have also heard about the telecommunications between Netanyahu and Trump. At the same time, there are relevant issues, including the release of Iranian assets. Apart from the Zionist entity, which are the third party that may undermine the negotiations? As you are aware, the Zionist entity are doing their best to undermine the agreement, and we do expect to see some actions by Israel to torpedo the entire negotiation process. Nothing is ruled out. However, that those countries calling for war and hostilities, the Zionist entity included, are widely felt in the media, and they may have a bearing on the decisions made by the U.S. officials. There are who are advocating war and aggression, be it from among the Republicans, Democrats, or even the Zionist entity and some third party. This is not something new. It is obvious that as history has it, all these voices are meant to keep the U.S. rolling in a vicious circle of endless wars, and they will continue to do so. Many issues have been reported on the Strait of Hormuz. Is this particular issue linked to Iran and the Sultanate of Oman? And recently, an Iranian officials paid a visit to Oman, and the Iranian foreign minister has conveyed a verbal message to his Omani counterparts. How do you comment? I would like to point out a number of issues on this particular subject. We are aware that the Strait of Hormuz constitutes a deep concern to the whole world, and as together with Oman are overlooking the waterway, we have more responsibilities. We should consider national interests and the security of Iran. At the same time, we should take into account the international concerns with respect to the Strait of Hormuz. Both Iran and Oman are doing their best to arrive at an impactful dynamic, which is conducive to restoring confidence for a safe passage within the Strait of Hormuz. This waterway can be benefited by all the world countries in terms of safe trade and maritime traffic. However, as a result of the U.S. Zionist aggression against Iran, as this particular Strait of Hormuz was used to launch attacks against a country which is member to the United Nations. We are doing all what we can in line with the international law to arrive at a lawful dynamic to manage the traffic at this waterway. And the Iranian foreign minister's message to Muscat falls within this context. Many bilateral communications have put to discussion and expressed deep concern, and many countries have expressed their rejection of the Zionist American aggression against Iran and its impact on the waterway. And when it comes to safe traffic at the Strait of Hormuz, we welcome any proposal by any world country.
Published images showing the shocking torture and abuse of human rights activists from the Sumud flotilla, many of whom were European citizens. Do you believe that the response from European countries to this matter has been sufficient? And what responsibilities do international and human rights organizations have in that regard?
We all see how Israel dealt with the Freedom Flotilla and how the images of torture, harassment, and the force being used against the Freedom Fleet. Some European countries and other world countries have expressed rejection, condemnation. Was this sufficient? The response given by the world community against the demeanors of the Zionist entity are clear. This reflects the reality of the demeanors of the Zionist entity against the civilians. And any disregard to these unlawful acts cannot go unnoticed. We shouldn't remain silent. The Zionist entities' demeanors against the civilians in Gaza, Palestine, and Lebanon are expressives of their policies for decades. Therefore, if the European countries are truly willing to act in an impactful manner, they should expressly and in line with international law, human rights laws, to move and act on the ground against the demeanors and the violations of the Zionist entity, not to stand up to any attempts aiming at bringing the Zionist entity and their officials to justice. All endeavors aiming at reaching a permanent ceasefire by all countries, namely Pakistan and Turkey, how can you evaluate them? And will Lebanon be part of the final ceasefire agreement? As stated earlier, ceasefire means a ceasefire on all fronts. Lebanon is part and parcel of all the negotiations and agreement, and that's why the regional countries are doing their best in order to avoid escalation and to arrive at final agreement. All these efforts are highly appreciated. Turkey, as a neighboring country, have contributed very valuable efforts, and we extend all thanks and appreciation to them, to our brothers in Turkey.
I'd like to know, sorry, I'm Karishma Vyas from ABC Australia. We would like to know under what conditions will Iran agree to the Strait of
Australia TV, how will Iran accept the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz? Will this time be different from any other round in the past? And will you be collecting tolls or fees against the passage through the waterway?
There is no toll. به نظرم باید در استخدام کلمات دقت کرد.
We are not levying any taxes, and we do not wish to collect any tolls. We should emphasize two matters. First, that the measures or moves taken by Iran and Oman are aiming at arriving at a protocol or a dynamic to ensure the safe passage through the waterway. This is a very responsible move, and it is in line with international law as well as the national interests of both our countries and, above all, to the greater good of the international community. And it is quite natural that the services provided through this waterway, including navigation and other movements, with respect to safeguarding the environment within the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, all these acts entail certain expenses. However, they cannot be described as tolls or fees. We are working together with Oman responsibly to arrive at a final solution at the earliest. Certain ideas were proposed by UK and France with respect to the Strait of Hormuz. Also, the draft resolution before the UN Security Council. Will other countries, apart from Iran and Oman, be part of the management of the waterway? No, there is none. Is there any country overlooking the Strait of Hormuz than Iran and Oman? As a coastal country overlooking the waterway, we, in line with the international laws, we are acting and doing our best to ensure the safe traffic. Any speculations will further exacerbate the situation. We are in communication with a number of countries, and many countries have welcomed this dynamic. However, the final formula should be reached at the earliest possible time. Last week, there were reports that the U.S. administrations will raise certain obstacles ahead of the participation of the Iranian national team in the World Cup, and also the talks about relocating the national team from the United States to Mexico. If you manage to overcome or even eliminate these obstacles, my question is, what are the measures to be taken by the foreign ministry to eliminate any future or similar obstacles, or to avoid any troubles being faced by the national team? Once again, I reiterate that the other party, the party we are dealing with, is FIFA, and the Iranian national team's visit to the United States has no other goal but to take part in the football tournament. And the United States is a host country hosting this tournament. That's why they are required, and it is part of their obligation, to provide all the necessary atmosphere for the presence and residence of the Iranian national team. According to the information I have, all coordination has been established with FIFA and the Mexican Football Federation to do all what is needed to spare the national team from any problems or hardships. All this falls within the responsibility of the FIFA and the host country to pave the way and do all what is needed to streamline and ensure the smooth presence and participation of the national team, the Iranian national team. There are reports that all what is being unfolding in the region would undermine the non-proliferation treaty. How has Iran assessed this particular issue? I believe there are two major factors. One, insistence by the countries in possession of nuclear weapons not to honor their obligations or commitments under the treaty. Both UK and France are dodging their undertakings with respect to ensuring the non-proliferation of the nuclear power. They are moving or acting in a very grave manner. The other factor is the role of the Zionist entity. The demands raised by the Middle East countries is to ensure that the region is free of nuclear weapons, and regretfully, on each and every conference with respect to the non-proliferation of nuclear weapon, the documents being signed spoke about the nuclear power possessed by the Zionist entity, but no action has been taken. And the clear disregard by the Zionist entity and the United States against the Iranian nuclear facilities. And as we speak, at the International Atomic Energy Agency or the United Nations, no condemnations has been issued against the aggressor countries. The Cuban origin American official said that Iran is not acting for the prosperity of their people, yet for the manufacturing of weapons and missiles. How do you respond to these comments? I believe this irresponsible statement by U.S. officials after more than 73 days of aggression against the Iranian sovereign country and Iranian people. It is very ridiculous, if not rude, of them to speak about their interest in the welfare of the Iranian people. If we hadn't prepared our defenses, our enemies would have been able to gobble up our country and satiate their greeds. I just would like to draw your attention to new facts. Throughout a 40-day military aggression against Iran, the United States and the Zionist entity targeted not only innocent, defenseless women and children, but also civil infrastructure, including the steel factories and other industries, pharmaceutical industries. They were all targeted, where these industries created by monies other than Iranian money, the power plants, water plants, bridges, and other civil infrastructures, all these vital infrastructure were created by Iranian monies. Therefore, all their statements are not only false, but malicious. In contrast, they should be held to account for all their violations and crimes against Iran and the Iranian people. I would like to ask you about the role of China within the diplomatic process between Iran and the United States. Can we state that any agreement to be reached will be based on certain proposals from China? China is a state having very good ties and relations with us. We have a 25-year agreement in addition to other strategic partnership, and with respect to all the processes pertinent to the Iranian nuclear program, China had always had a very positive role. And when it comes to the ongoing negotiations, we are on constant communication with both China and Russia. And yesterday, there was a very important meeting held between the Iranian foreign minister and his Russian and Chinese counterpart. And a while ago, the Chinese president presented a 4-point proposal on the restoration of security and stability within the region. Also, during Mr. Araghchi's visit to Beijing, the issue of bilateral cooperation, namely restoration and maintaining peace and security within the region and the Strait of Hormuz, are always part and parcel of their discussions, and China has had a positive role in all these issues and will continue as such. According to some sources, it is claimed that a particular country was sidelined in order to reach a final agreement. And do you see a timeline to reach a final agreement? No. When it comes to a deadline in order to arrive at the final solution cannot be identified. And for us, the faster agreement is reached in a manner that is preserving the national interests and the interests of our people, it is better. However, again, our national interest is our priority. Once a final agreement is reached, it will be announced on timely basis. As Professor Araghchi, during his Security Council meeting, going to meet with officials from other countries? No. When this piece of news came to the media, I stated that we are planning that there are no other priorities during that visit. This visit, according to the conditions and the recent visa issue with the United States, and I believe the UN Security Council session should be convened within a couple of days. So therefore, this visit is not likely to happen. Again, speaking of the negotiations, you have answered many questions. However, I would like to ask you, due to the intensity and magnitude of reports and media news, I would like you to give us a final brief on the issue. And to what degree or to what point has the negotiation arrived in terms of resolving all the contentious issues? And do we expect a final agreement soon? I can say that every person involved is working as we speak. And many of the issues that remain in dispute are now being worked upon, and we should always remember that the negotiation model, if we wish this process to succeed, we are living a constant change of statements and positions. And as you follow the official statements posted by the U.S. officials, which are conflicting to their demeanors on the ground, and you are all also aware of the many issues we are dealing when it comes to diplomacy. However, I assure you that our negotiators aiming at maintaining firm grip on all the security issues, taking into consideration what took place over the past year, we will continue to do our best to maintain and safeguard our national interests. Recently, there's been some speculations, namely within the Arab media, based on claims that Iran will accept the release of their assets from the United States in return for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. We should be more clear and precise when it comes to statements. The right of free passage through the Strait of Hormuz cannot be used or manipulated. We are exercising our right with respect to the movement within the Strait of Hormuz. Again, in return for the maritime services provided within the waterway, certain charges would be collected. Again, the issue of the Strait of Hormuz lies totally at the hands of the two coastal countries, Iran and Oman, who are acting responsibly and are on constant communication and consultation with the international community in line with the international law and as and when required. A question about the next round of negotiations, and my answer to this is, at any point when we reach a tangible outcome, a final agreement, and the views come to a converging point, as we speak, messages are being exchanged through the Pakistani mediator, and there is no need, as we speak, to have a direct negotiation session. The U.S. Secretary of State, during his visit to India, initiated a number of calls that no international waterway should be nationalized by any country. Can this be set as a new role? Are you aiming at nationalizing the Strait of Hormuz? My best advice to the U.S. officials is not to speak about breaking promises, as it was them that they have initiated an aggression against a sovereign country, killing innocent women and children. Isn't this an act of violation of laws? The statements or the wordings used by the U.S. officials are meant disinform and mislead the public opinion. As I said, we, together with Oman, as the two coastal countries overlooking the Strait of Hormuz, are working for the greater good of the international community as well as our bilateral national interest. We are doing our best to eliminate any state of insecurity or instability, be it caused by the United States or any other country, taking into consideration the demeanors and acts of the United States over the past 4 months. Again, our moves and acts are responsible. aiming
We've
at
been listening to Esmaeil Baghaei, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson there, giving a status update on Iran's perspective on where we are in talks between the United States and Iran via mediators. Probably the key takeaway is that he said that both sides have reached a framework, but nobody can say that an agreement between the US and Iran is imminent. He spoke length about the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. He said the potential memorandum of understanding has no specific details about the management of the Strait. But he said that the management essentially belongs to the coastal countries, namely Iran and Oman, and denied that the Strait would be opened in return for any easing of sanctions or the release of frozen assets. He spoke for quite a long time, close to about 45 minutes.